Oh, with myself, Greg WITZ, and my very good friend, Mike Weiss. Going to talk all
Aloha.
things humans. How are you, my friend? What's going on?
Oh, talking humans, we had a great week last week here in the United States because it was Thanksgiving. So we like that we're able to have a day that we can just practice being grateful and thankful. And it was so odd. We have Eureka here, and she's European from Switzerland, but crossing over a different number of different borders. We have 30 people at Thanksgiving, 11 countries.
Wow. Hmm.
And 11 countries. And when you're bound to have 11 countries, guess what you're going to end up with also? One fight.
Communicate. Yeah. All
We had a, we
communication
had a,
problems.
no, we had a fist fight. It
No.
was,
No.
yes, it was the craziest thing. I mean, our friends who have a very nice house here in Miami let us use the house. They're like, we're not going to do anything. We're from Israel. We never participated in Thanksgiving. You bring everything, take everything away. You got it. So after dinner, and we went around 30 people. What are we grateful for? And it was amazing. And then there was a Jewish German guy that got very upset at two other Jewish US guys because there was a conversation about Thanksgiving. And there's a lot of conversations in Canada and the United States about the Indians.
Mhm.
Because when we came into this land, particularly in Canada, my family here from Montreal, they're trying to give back land. Like we were mean to the Indians. I think, killed more than mean, a few million of them. And so the
Not a very good
conversation,
Thanksgiving story, by the way.
and so it came up. So then he's like, "Well, what am I doing here at this table?" And we were like, "Well, listen, from generations ago, Eureka, this is perfect for this lead into you can give us some professional advice." But from generations ago, I mean, obviously the people that slaughtered the Indians are a lot different than the people sitting here at the table. It's like what are you going to do? You're going to be upset with us? And then my friend made the mistake of saying, it's like, you're here, in Germany, not so, and 80 years ago, it was a terrible thing happened globally. It was more than just the Jews. It was, tens of millions of people that were slaughtered. But like today, no one's holding your generation responsible for that. I mean, some of the elders maybe, and what ended up happening is my friend ended up taking his plate into the to the kitchen and put it away. The guy ran after him, and
No.
he's like, "I can't believe you said that." He's like, and then my friend is like a pretty big guy, and the guy started throwing punches, and it was just crazy. So then the guy finally left. My friend didn't throw a punch back because he,
Uh,
he could have done some damage, but he was like, we had a whole conversation afterwards about where did the communication go wrong.
This could have been like a National Lampoon sort of, movie, the way you just described it, right? But, I think to that point, communication, right? I think this is where it all goes wrong, which is the misinterpretation, the misunderstanding, the trying to communicate, articulate, and express, and it gets a little worse. It's in a dinner setting. There's probably some drinks flowing as well. And we're also living in some very sensitive times right now. I mean, I don't think we've been as divided in the world today than ever, right? So, on that note,
Oh my
Marie,
God, we just threw a whole turkey dinner. A
Out the
whole
window.
turkey
My
dinner.
God.
Welcome.
welcome to the show.
Yeah. No, I think, it's because communication is much more complicated than we think. We think I say something, I say word A, B, C, D, E, I phrase my sentence, and logically the other person understands exactly this sentence. And it's never like this, ever, ever, ever. There's so many shades. And like Greg said, it depends on which mood are people in, what happened before. Do we have a lot of anxiety in ourselves at this very moment? And if it's a sensitive topic that is in your family for maybe a few generations already, like the Jewish topic in Germany it's extremely sensitive. You just
Mhm.
push on the wrong button and somebody goes off and you have no clue why, because you have just triggered something by the words or by the body language, so even more subconscious what's going on, and the other person is overreacting and you don't get it why. And then depends on the personalities how quickly that can escalate. Yeah. But that's about communication. We see these misunderstandings all the time in small and bigger shape everywhere because we think it's simple and it's not.
Right.
So the impact for us was we had a lot to talk about. I don't know. Now we have some
By the
stories.
way, do you get to use the house again next year?
Yeah, they were fine. And this guy is, he's like a couple inches shorter than me. And he was in the Israeli military, and then for a decade, he worked in LA, working with some of the diplomats. He's like, thankfully, he didn't do that to me because my natural instincts, he would have been in a hospital. No, but one thing is that I definitely don't have to see that guy again because he's not getting invited to any of my dinners. But it's, this was, it's just, I mean, it's not funny. It's funny. It's not funny. It was a small little thing, but from a corporate standpoint, like what happens, like, let's take an example.
Yeah, it's not turkey dinner.
Let's take an example.
It's a boardroom.
You have a corporate event, and then, there's the corporate leadership's there, and then whoever gets invited. And then after the event, everyone can go to the bar and have drinks. And then, people, like, I guess, are loosening their guard and like, how do you handle when something goes wrong? It's always easy to say everything's going great and it's easy to handle. What, like, from a corporate standpoint, like, do you get called in to help solve communication breakdowns and issues and challenges, Eureka?
No, I normally don't do that. I coach leaders how they can do that, but I'm not called in to do it. But I help them to do it, and I help them to understand what the motivations of the different people are. Because usually when we see a conflict and when we have zero training in communications or how we shape a targeted messages and all of that, then we just come in with our own perspective. And that's just the wrong one because it's for sure not the right perspective because the other two people have two other perspectives. And to just get a better understanding where they're coming from, because very often the conflict is just because they have such a different level. The foundation is so different, what is important to them, the basics. They're not even aware that they are so different from the basics. And this is why there's a misunderstanding on something minor sometimes happening, where they get really, angry about themselves or about the other person. And I think it's about understanding just better what the other wants. What is that? What are the goals of the different person? I don't mean the business goals, what they have, but they have something in mind. And most of the time, they have not even defined that for themselves, and they just have that reaction and don't even know why. If you have like a conflict like that, very often people don't exactly know why, or they think they know. But when you start really asking what is behind that, it's just the tip of the iceberg, and what's beneath that is the real issue. And the real issue gets never tackled because if you don't dig deeper, well, nobody will see it, including the person, him or herself. And I think this is the whole thing in conflict.
Right.
So
just jump in. I want to ask something. So I think, or make a comment. I think what you just said was clear. Communication is easy until the conflict pops up, and it's when the conflict pops up that becomes the thing that creates misunderstanding. As soon as misunderstanding happens, communication isn't happening, right? And we might agree, or I might ask you, is it like the number one thing we're looking for in all of these situations is to be understood? Is that sort of the thing that just breaks the conflict?
Yes. I mean, if you say it like that, it's not exactly like that because it feels like I have to be understood. As if I was the important person and the other one needs to understand me. I would rather say, I think the important thing is to first of all understand yourself, because many people don't do that. So first of all, understand yourself. And then the other person has maybe a chance to understand you as well, because you might be able to articulate that a bit differently. And I think the self-understanding is the first piece, and then you can try to understand also the other. But it's all about understanding what are the motivators here, really speaking them out and then coming to an agreement. And I think this is the most important thing, that we don't make assumptions when we have a discussion with someone, but we make a real agreement. We rephrase what we have understood. If we rephrase that, we usually realize that the other person has to correct us because we say roughly the same thing, but then the other is always like that. Rephrase something what someone said and the person will say, nearly there, But and what comes after the but is when it's blowing up. It's not always blowing up, fortunately. When it's blowing up, it's leading to these misunderstandings, worst case, even to a big conflict.
Mm. So here's a question. If it's just a US based company and most of the people, their native language is English, will they be more or less susceptible into conflict versus an international company when everyone knows, okay, my native is German, my native is Italian, my native is English. So everyone assumes that like we're going to suck at communication.
I think that depends in which stage you are. Let me differentiate a bit. I think in the beginning of a communication, when you have a first misunderstanding, let's say layer one, you will have quicker misunderstandings between different nations because they express themselves in English differently. I express myself in English how I can, best I can, and everybody else in the corporate world does the same. Okay, so first level, you might have quicker a misunderstanding, I think. But then when it comes to the second level, and when it comes to, there was a misunderstanding, you didn't understand me right, then there's, I think, much more tolerance when it comes to an international level, because then everybody knows, no, sorry, I've maybe not expressed myself correctly. And I think the credibility of that is higher because the others, say a Spanish guy says, oh, sorry, I've maybe not expressed myself correctly, says that to, I don't know, a Canadian guy. Then maybe the Canadian guy, yeah, sure, it's a language thing. So let's listen once more. And I think the openness to listen once more is higher than in an international environment, even if you have more misunderstandings from the starting point. I think that's the thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Look, I think, to that point, I said this earlier, I think we're in times now where people are not listening. People are too quick to come into these conversations to villainize or to deem the other person wrong. And it immediately sets up this sort of obstacle, And I think one of the things that people miss in communication is the focus of that entire interaction is to create understanding. That's what you said on both parts, right? Can I understand what their position is? Can I rephrase that? So, would you agree or disagree with that? That I think we're living in times now where people are coming in a little loaded, guns pulled out, ready to start firing some of those bullets in regard to opposition and argument and points, and not necessarily coming into conversations to discuss and to be open and to listen.
Yeah, I think so. And I think we have also lost a lot being so much online in meetings and so few physically in place, because I think what we are missing, that we got used to a very flat level of communication by this, because communication is not only verbal, it's much more even non-verbal than verbal. You know that as well. I mean, the percentages are tremendous. Body language 8 times more effective than words, 8 times more. And what do you see of body language in here? You see that part of the body usually when you have online meetings. Yeah, and we are so much used to having this limited view of people. We just we don't find it comfortable. I have never met someone who says, oh, I love that, it's so comfortable. Being at home is maybe comfortable, but how the communication works is not. And I think we're missing out on a lot. And probably, I think that it's still relatively new, even if it's now in the third year. But it's still relatively new compared to maybe 20 years of experience before or other ways of working. But the more we do that, the more we lose or we miss this better understanding, as we have as normally when you come into a room, you immediately feel better because you have all these non-verbal cues. You kind of feel safer with the other person. You can understand their reaction. There's not this poker face like in most of the online meetings, where not even a smile. I mean, nothing. It's just like, boom. You don't even know if they're checking their emails or listening to you. What are they doing?
Right.
And I think this uncertainty builds up. I can imagine that over time, just the anxiety level builds up and nervousness about certain things. And maybe this is why conflicts come up quicker than they do if we had more face-to-face meetings. I can imagine that this is an issue.
1,000% agree with that. And that's why you had a fight at dinner, Mike, because people haven't been around each other in 2 years, so they don't know how to behave at the table. Right?
It's so interesting. I think there's what you just described. I think there's a ladder, and this is a big problem in the United States. We had in one of my mastermind groups with 100+ CEOs. One gentleman was in the military for 20 years, and he runs a private detective company for the last 20. And unfortunately, his job is to help find kids that get lost and they get entrapped, and like the machine that's behind it, it's so scary because he did like a 20-minute talk, but it just led me to think about like there's levels where it becomes harder to be an asshole. When you're texting, you basically or anything like social, you can social media, you can say whatever you want. People are like down, there's no face, there's no, you're just downright mean. And then as you introduce, okay, I'm on a telephone call with someone, maybe you're less likely to be so mean. And then on a Zoom, maybe less likely, but certainly face to face, as
Mhm.
you're saying, you know, we're we're in an abnormal environment considered compared to where we were, you know, 3, 4, 5 years ago from a workplace for sure, because
It's
100% of the people were at work.
right. It's a major problem. It's a major, let's just boil this right down. We as human beings are connected creatures. We're herd animals, right? We live in the village. We herd together. We are meant to interact with each other, right? And it is communication that is the vehicle for that connection. And what I was going to say, this is a major problem, like, because it crosses my desk or our company a lot, which is, hey, can you do leadership training for the leaders on how to connect with their team members more? Because there's a great sense of disconnection, and there's a lack of trust, and there's a lack of like people don't really know each other, and blah 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 blah. And like, I was joking. I was like, well, yeah, right? And no, there is no training for that. But what there is maybe you bring people in the office together a little more. Maybe we put people around each other. I had another client, he said it beautifully. He said, sometimes these digital walls are thicker than the actual concrete walls in the office
Yeah.
or the cubicles, right?
Mm.
So, yeah. Anyway, that
So
was a ramble.
here's a so you're Enrique. How do you take knowledge and then turn it into a way of being? Because I read in one of your documents, the big problem is the implementation of knowledge. Because I can read every book on communication and then be terrible at it 100% of the time.
Yeah, it's about doing it. Now, the thing with doing it's obviously about doing it. So it's about embedding a behavior by experiences. So it's really going into experiences. I never do 2 full day trainings and then go off and people say, wow, that was interesting. And 3 months later, they have forgotten 90%. And 6 months later, they have forgotten 98%. Because they have not embedded it. They have done nothing with it. They're just back into their routine, back into their stress. They have no time. So for me, it's important to always have assignments, stretch assignments, where they have to go out of their comfort zone and try this new thing and really do it, make an experience, maybe also a difficult experience, and share that and create some learning. So that is one thing. But that's not enough, I think, because to get people to do that, they need to overcome thresholds, especially in communication. I rarely have people from the marketing department in my trainings because most of them don't need that. I have people from finance, IT, regulatory, people who are in these roles because per se, that is a good role for somebody who does not like to communicate that much. It's all
They don't
about
like people.
numbers and something like that. Yeah. And then it's really about understanding, helping them to understand what inner beliefs they have about themselves that are holding them back to just try certain things out to become a better communicator. They will not become an extrovert, and I don't want them to become an extrovert somehow. That's not the point. It's about, if you're an introvert, if you hate communicating, what do you think about yourself? If you think, I can never, ever, ever be a good communicator, never, ever, I will be able to deliver even an interesting presentation, even if the content could be interesting, but I can't deliver it in an inspiring way. If you believe that, you can have all the skills in the world. And like you say, you can read 20 books or 100 books and nothing will change. So for me, the starting point is always the belief system at the same time as the skills, because I think this is how you can trigger a change, or you at least enhance the chances that a person will, on a longer period of time, use the skills that they have learned in a training.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Mhm. It's back to the basics, Mike. It's like go and do. This is what you're thinking about in your relationship, right? The communication. You gotta go practice the
You need to
communication.
do it. There's no way around that.
I get, because like we said earlier, when things are going fine, everything is fine. But when you have the breakdowns, that's where you really get to practice. So I'm having breakdowns all the time. And it's, you know, we have a 4.5-year-old, and Greg's kids are about the same age. We were in Costa Rica together. We've hung out together. And this little guy, you know, it's for certain he absolutely reinforced that my wife and I cannot stand to be told what to do, ever. I grew up that way, and my dad was like a dictator, you know, in a mostly good way, but he was like that. And I don't know exactly what got my wife that way. So then, you know, we are like, you know, this because every little thing is one person telling the other person what to do, and it blows up. But he comes from, you know, somehow from our lineage and our genes, and he's 4.5, and you can't even tell him anything what to do.
Yeah.
So what do you have? So what's a good exercise we get to work on?
You mean to get someone a bit more to do what you want to do, to get a quick yes to something?
Yes,
Or
that's it.
just
He wants the trick to manipulate his
You know
4-year-old.
what a good thing is, it's just giving them the benefit, know why they should do that, and then you give them two options of how they can say yes to it. So instead of giving them the option of saying yes or no, I'll give you an example. You put meat and vegetables on their plate. You know, they will usually kids, they just eat the meat and they ignore the vegetables. Okay, so you can, if instead of asking him, hey, do you not want to eat your vegetables, or you should eat your vegetables, no, I don't eat the vegetables. Okay, instead of doing that, you can tell him, okay, you have the choice. You can eat, do you want to eat your vegetables before or after eating the meat? So you give them two yes answer options, and that helps the kid to empower themselves, because they feel like I am taking the decision, and I have taken the decision. And you can tell him afterwards, hey, you have decided that. Yeah. uh, a coachie of mine, she does something, their kids, they want always a special type of chocolate. Every day they get a little piece of a special type of chocolate. Okay, fine. And she wanted them to go to bed at a certain time in the evening. And she used that system to tell them, okay, you can go to bed at 8 p.m. or you could go to bed at 8:30 p.m. If you go to bed at 8 p.m. the next day, you receive your chocolate. If you go at 8:30, you do not receive your chocolate. What do you choose, 8 p.m. or 8:30 p.m.? And so they choose. And she said, what's absolutely incredible, she said, since I introduced that and they have made the decision, yeah, they never, if they go at 8:30 p.m., they never ask for the chocolate on the second day. Never, because that's their contract. They know, oh, it was my decision. And you know, this empowerment thing, people want to feel empowered. They want to have the feeling that they have contributed to what is happening to them. They have made a choice. And these little choices, especially in the corporate world, when you have a call to action at the end of a presentation, using this system, giving them a choice, you know, compromise you can live with. Often it's when it's implemented. Do we start this week or do you want to start next week, for example? These kind of little things that you can give away. And if you go for that, a benefits and options piece, then it's totally different in terms of the execution afterwards, because the people buy in. They feel like, okay, I'm empowered. I've taken the decision, so now I have to stick to it. If they don't, they will not blame you. They will blame themselves, because they say, oh, I don't stick to my own promises. So that's a really good trick to get to a yes. A tricky yes, yeah, if you want to sell something to someone internally in the company or at home to your kids.
Amazing.
That's great.
So on that
Greg,
note,
what about your kids? What kind of tricks do they play with you?
what I do is I let them out the cage when they're really good, so they know they get. No. But you know, I think it's very important that what you're talking about is transferring responsibility and communicating with what we call adult to adult, right? The ability to get them to think, to get them to contribute through decisions, and instead of direct and just tell, it becomes more of an equal type of conversation. Obviously, with a kid, you sort of water these things down to a level, specifically like with your 4-year-old. Mine are actually 6 and 8 now. It's a completely different style of communication, which is interesting. But then it's the same thing back to team members. Again, whether we're talking about a project, a task, whether we're talking about performance, I think it's really important that it's done in a way which transfers the responsibility and gets them to loop in with the conversation instead of just direct. So with that being said, what are some other best practices moving forward in 2023? I'm going to have difficult conversations. I know I'm going to bump up against conflict. I know one of my goals is to try to ensure that I understand the other party and vice versa. What could be some things that we, myself, Mike, and others, practice to be effective communicators next year? Are you frozen? I think. Oh,
Eureka. I'm there.
there we go. All right.
She's got a
So she froze. Hopefully she'll kick back on in. But that was interesting, man. That was interesting. Right. So what do you
yeah.
think you could have done differently at dinner?
I mean, I missed the whole thing. I mean, I didn't even know what's going on. I walked into the kitchen area like 10 minutes later, and there was like 6 people, and I could feel the energy. I was like, "What's going on?" My brother stepped in between them, and then the guy just walked out the front door. But what's interesting is I met this guy once before when he came over for Shabbat dinner, and after he left, I told my wife, I said, "You know what? I don't like that guy." And I'm usually very good spidey senses about some kind of energy or something.
Mm-hmm.
I think something was just a bit off.
Yeah.
But it goes back to the same thing that we always talk about, is that from a tolerance standpoint, it's wonderful to disagree and understand a person has a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even try to see their perspective if you have sort of the capability to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But absolutely say, I understand your perspective. I completely disagree,
Mm-hmm.
but I respect your opinion.
Right. But those days, that's what I was talking about before. Those days are gone. Remember the good old days, which is like, okay, opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one, and like you would walk away. Today, it's you don't get to have that opinion, that thought, that position. And I think the ultimate responsibility we have moving forward as leaders and as communicators is to ensure that when we communicate, it's not just communicating with impact, it's communicating to ensure that there's understanding. And the most important thing we create is dialogue. The opportunity to go back and forth, to express, to ask questions, to have dialogue. All right, she's back. Do you want to let her in?
I don't see her.
Mm-hmm. She's in the chat.
Um, how do I let her in? Do you see her?
I see the chat that's going off,
Oh,
but
she's backstage. Hold on, let me see. I don't even know. I want to see if I can figure out what backstage is. Hold on.
this is a live show, by the way, right?
I do know. So we're learning on the fly about backstage. Oh, there she is. There.
You gotta let her in.
Woohoo!
Sorry, no,
There we go. Okay. How's your
Yes.
audio there? We had a little bit of feedback there.
Is it now working? Fine.
Good.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I was twice in there now for this because I joined.
Anyway,
Okay.
welcome to a live show, right? And
Exactly.
and on. Anyway, we were just sort of wrapping up because we're coming to the end of the show, and we're going to ask for your information. But what could be some best practices that we go ahead with 2023 to be good communicators, to create understanding? What would you share with the audience on what they could be mindful of or what they could practice?
I think the core thing and the easiest thing to start with is listening. It sounds so simple, but I think most people are bad listeners, and it includes me. I'm not a natural good listener at all, and I think this is the first starting point, because we always think we have to be better in our messaging, and we have to shape it clearer or think more about how we write that, how we say that. But how do you know if you haven't listened before? How do you know if you have not listened to the person, what these people want, what they need, what is going on out there? And I think we don't listen carefully. And if I had to say just one thing, I would say, just keep in mind that you listen to understand instead of listening to reply. Most of the time we listen to reply. In our head, we are shaping the reply or the question that we want to ask. And in this very moment, we don't listen anymore. And we don't hear the little details. And this is where the misunderstandings come from. So I think having the courage that when the person has finished speaking, that there might be a gap of silence because you cannot give an answer in the second, because you have to think, because you have not done that while the person was speaking. I think this would make a real difference. And a tool to get there, to truly listen, is to say, okay, now I listen and I want to be able to paraphrase. So then you really have to listen carefully. this is a good tool, a trick for yourself to say, I want to paraphrase, so now I have to listen. That's what I would say.
That's great advice. That's really great practical advice. Ulrike, where could the audience learn more about you?
So very simple. I mean, my name is complicated enough. So my website is my name, ulrikeseminati.com, simply. They can learn there more, or just go on my LinkedIn profile, also my name, and you can find out more there. So these are the two channels where you find most information about me.
Amazing.
Yes, I saw you on LinkedIn. Are you coming to the United States?
Not soon.
Oh,
I'm doing more business around, well, Latin America a bit, more in the
Costa
Middle
Rica.
East,
What about you going to
Europe.
You coming to Costa Rica?
That would be nice. We were nearly doing that for holidays over Christmas, but finally we go to the Maldives.
Maldives. We have to choose. We have to choose between Costa Rica and the Maldives. This is a good
horrible
life.
choice. Horrible choice. But that's on my top 10 list, or top 3 list actually, of destinations where.
Well, you'll reach out when you want to come here. We'll get you all set up. All right. Thank you for being here. It was insightful.
Yes.
And your thoughts and advice was fantastic. Mike, what did you take away from today? What are you going to go practice?
If I heard you correctly, you were asking me what I'm going to take away from this.
Yes. What are you going to go practice?
And I'm practicing my paraphrasing.
Oh, okay.
I'm starting right away.
Excellent. Awesome. All right, Mike, sign us off, my friend.
All right. Well, you have that written communication. We were all corporate. We had that paragraph. You lost it?
No, I got it. Well, today's episode once again is about talking humans, and we appreciate you taking the time to listen. If you like today's episode, don't forget to share it. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to follow. Definitely connect with all three of us, and we will see you next week every Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern.
That's well written, very short to the point. And you want to close out with anything, Ulrike?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a great pleasure. And for all leaders out there, watch out for your communication skills. That's the key. That's the interface. This is where it's happening between human beings.
Nice. And human to human. I love it.
Exactly.
Talking human. Greg?
We will see all of you next week.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.